This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flowers series. In this video, we're going to be making buttercream hydrangeas. The video is broken down into segments, so you can rewatch, skip ahead, or rewind as desired. So let's start making our colors. We're going to start off by making 2 shades of blue, and we've got American style buttercream in our cup, and we're going to use 3 liquid gel colors: royal blue, violet, and then finally we're going to use a little lemon yellow. And I've got quite a bit of buttercream in my cup. I'm going to make my lighter shade of blue, and then I'm going to pull just a tiny bit over and make just a little bit of a darker value that I'm going to stripe my bag with. So I've got some of each color out on my container lid here, and I'm just going to do some nice little specks of my blue, kind of big, a little bit, just tiny of that purple. And I'm going to use this to make my lighter shade of blue. And just any kind of light blue, periwinkle blue will work for hydrangeas. You don't really need to do any kind of specific color. I like the tone that the royal gives me. We're just going to mix it around. Make sure I get all that white I have down there at the bottom because I've got quite a bit in the cup. I have a nice shade of light blue, so it's going to be perfect for the centers of those flowers. I'm just going to scrape most of this over to one side and just take a nice big tablespoon and put it over on the opposite side. Then I'm going to take some extra of both that blue and the purple, and I'm just going to give it a mix on this side of the cup. And one of the reasons I like the big cups is that it's easy then to make a nice little second darker shade or lighter shade if you need or want to, and kind of make some different colors in that same kind of color family and range. You can see, and this gives us a nice darker shade of the same color. So kind of picture it like you're making colors on one of those little paint chip strips where you're kind of using the same ratio of pigments and you're just making darker and lighter shades. So it's kind of like a monochromatic color palette. So you can see those 2 colors are very different. So this is going to be great for striping the outside, and this is going to work well for the inside. So we're going to set this aside and make the yellow for the centers of our flowers. So for our yellow, we're going to use just a little bit of lemon yellow on our toothpick, just a tiny little touch. And then you can use either a tiny little speck of your purple, which I'm using, or your blue, just to kind of give it a slightly different tint. We don't want it to be too bright, too lemony. That'll help dull it out, give it a little bit of a greenish tinge, and make it really go well with the blue. And you can see this gives us a nice light yellow that just has a hint of that green to it. So it's not a pure kind of tone, it just has that little bit of skew towards the blue and makes it just have a little bit of a greenish tinge to it. But it's still very much a shade of yellow. So that's going to be a perfect little yellow for the dots for the centers of our little blossoms. So we're going to use 3 bags for this flower, and we've got 2 of them ready. The first has some of my light blue in it and a number 12 tip. This can be any large round tip, or you could even just use the opening of a coupler. That is up to you. We're just going to make a nice large mound with it, so it doesn't really need to be a specific one. And we have a small round tip, a number 1 on the bag with our yellow that we're going to use for the centers. Our final bag is fitted with a 104 tip, and we're going to stripe this one. So we wanted to show you how we loaded it up. We have it folded over halfway. You can see I've got that tip down in there, and I've got it lined up with the crease on this side. So the skinny end is lined up with that crease, so I know exactly where to put my dark blue. And if you have it, some skinny spatulas, anything that's narrow, whether it's like a little knife, a palette knife, whatever the case may be, that's going to allow you to really kind of load that up into a nice defined line and really get a precision application is good. Sometimes I even use things like barbecue skewers, but you just want to hold that bag Get your hand down in there, make sure you take a look, line it up, and you can see I can just easily apply a nice skinny thin line of that blue frosting right there. I can even manipulate it a little bit, right? My frosting isn't too soft, right? And it's not too firm. It's in that nice little area temperature-wise where I can just apply that to the side. It's gonna stick and stay in place. You see it's not moving around on me, that's important. And then it's gonna be easy for me to put light blue on the other side and then squish it down to load my bag. So I'm just gonna use one of my small spatulas for that. I'm gonna load up my light blue. And I'm just going to run my hand up there again and then apply the light blue on the other side. And just use my spatula just to kind of encourage it to go down. And this doesn't have to be exact, we just want the idea of having a darker edge on the outside of the petals, and this will allow us to do that. So the important thing with striping, just take your time. If your frosting is firm enough, it should be easy to apply with control, and you shouldn't have any problems. It's not something you want to do with super warm frosting or in a super warm room either, because it might get too messy on you too quickly. So just take my time, apply that in there. That way when I fold the top up, you can see I've got my dark stripe on one side, my lighter on the other. Just make sure your tip is lined up. And then when you're ready, you can take it and press that frosting forward. You'll notice when I loaded it up, I didn't go all the way into the tip. So when you're ready, just press it forward and then our bags are ready to go. We've got our 104, our number 1, and our 12. So we're going to be using 2 techniques to create our hydrangea flowers. Let's talk about them briefly and which tips we're going to use to do which. So we're going to use our number 12 and our 1 to create dots. The 12 is going to create a really large dot and the 1 is going to create a small one. And anytime you're making dots, you want to hold your tip up off the surface. We're going to be straight up and down for this because we're piping on the tray, but later just keep in mind that it's going to be perpendicular to the surface. And we're going to just be right there hovering above so that frosting can balloon out. And then we're going to just swirl off the top to make a nice clean dot with it. And then with the 12, we're just going to make a really nice big one. And the second are our petals. That is the one where we're using our 104 tip. And we're just doing that classic petal where we're pulling out, kind of rotating a little bit, either with your hand or with the nail, and then pulling back. And these are just going to be really nice and short, so we get that kind of look for those cute little hydrangea petals. So just a nice, quick little petal, almost fan shape, and dots. And those are the 2 things that we're going to do to create these hydrangea blossoms. So let's talk about how we're going to use those techniques to build our hydrangea blossom. We're going to start out with our number 12 tip and we're going to make a nice large dot with it. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. We're just trying to create a nice big mound so we can get lots of those little hydrangea blossoms on it and make ourselves a nice little cluster. The second thing we're going to do is cover it with 4 petal hydrangea blossoms. So those little tiny little flowers. And then we're going to add any extra petals to fill in the gaps. So just some quick ones here and there. Any place we've got a space or an open area on that mound that we need to cover up. And then we're going to finish it off with dots in the center of any of those 4 blossom groupings. And what we're going to do is pipe 3 petals that are kind of flat, and then we're going to do 1 on its side. And that's going to give them a little twist. It's going to give these little clusters some extra dimension and really look like those hydrangea flowers because they get clumped together and the petals kind of they're arranged in kind of little wonky angles, and it's going to give it a slightly more natural feel. So now that we've talked about how we're going to use those techniques to build them, let's pull out our flower nail and give it a practice. So we've got our flower nail out. It's a nice big one. I've got a little piece of parchment on top. I've affixed it with a tiny bit of buttercream, and I've got my bag with my 12 tip ready to go. I'm going to hold it straight up and down, and I'm going to really let that frosting balloon out, make a nice big ball. You can see I really want to build it up. Give yourself some surface area to build these little blossoms on. So it's really nice and big fat dot there. I'm going to change to my bag with my 104 tip. I'm just going to start with my first blossom right here on the top to fill in that top area, and then I'm just gonna work my way around and fit them in anywhere I can, and sometimes I might make some halfsies, but it's a little easier to demo the first one cleanly on top. So just think of it like it's the center of the flower nail and you're piping just right on top of it. And I'm just gonna do 1, 2, and 3 quick petals, and then the fourth one I'm just gonna pull so that it's straight up and down. And you can see that gives it a nice little flare, a little bit of twist, and a little more depth and dimension. And now I'm just gonna work my way all the way around the side and make other little 4-petal groupings anywhere I can fit them in. Don't worry about petals knocking into each other or anything else like that. Once you get these on there, it's gonna look fantastic. And don't be worried about edges covering up the edges of other ones or anything like that. Just go in there any angle you can. And it really ends up having some height to it. And creating a lovely little look. And you'll probably end up with a few little spots, like you can see right there, where you have some gaps. Just go in and put in a random little petal or 2, just to fill those in. Just usually give it a little squeeze. And that's enough to cover it up and make the eye think that there's another blossom kind of tucked underneath that you can't really see. To finish them off, we're just going to go ahead and put little dots in the center of all those little 4-petal groupings. And that is going to create the illusion of our little hydrangea blossom. So anywhere you need to finish it, create the look of a flower center, just go in and add a dot. And there we have a beautiful little hydrangea blossom clump. You can make a whole bunch of them, pair them together. These are even great to do on top of cupcakes. So we've practiced on our flower nail. Let's give it a try on a cupcake. These are really easy ones to do on cupcakes, and they're a great way to finish them. I'm just gonna start like I would with my flower nail, number 12 tip, right in the center, up off the surface, nice big dot there in the middle to give us something to work on, right? So big, good surface area. The more surface area you have, the more blossoms you can pipe. And when I did my nail, just to demo it, I started on the top, but it's actually a little easier to work around the sides and fill in the top last. It's just easier to see the blossoms piped on the top. And so I'm just gonna hold it at a slight angle and just start making my way around. And you can see it's easy to cover up to the edges of your cupcake. And really just kind of let that frosting flow out of the bag, make your way all the way around. These are really cute to finish off with some little leaves as well if you want. But you can leave them as just the little blossoms too. And hydrangeas come in a great range of colors, so you can really just play it up and do a lot of different styles and types. So then I can just kind of go right here on the top, and I'll probably take just 1 or 2 to finish off. And don't be afraid to put the petals in kind of weird angles. And you can see you get that beautiful ruffly look. And we'll really highlight each of these little blossoms by going in and putting just a little dot of yellow in the center of each. I'll just make my way back around. And anywhere I have a flower center, I'll just highlight it with that little dot of yellow. I'll just give it a little spot check, Make sure there are no gaps, nothing I want to fill in, but if you use the same color buttercream for the center that you do for one of your petal colors, then it's really easy. It just gives the illusion, even if there's a little showing, that there's petals in there that you can't really see and aren't defined. But it's a quick and easy way to decorate cupcakes and make them look like beautiful clumps of hydrangeas. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.